Tonight on America's Hope, we talk to Elizabeth Smart about her triumph over trials of sexual exploitation. She'll talk to us tonight about how she's out there on the front lines to provide hope and healing. Next on America's Hope. Good evening, I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope. We're glad that you could join us this hour. We do hope that you're safe and well wherever you are, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. And one person who matters to her family, and they searched for her desperately when she was abducted as a child, snatched from her own home by a stranger, is Elizabeth Smart. She joins us this hour to talk about how 1 in 3 females will experience sexual violence in their lives. But she's going to talk about how she overcame that and how she is now engaged through her Elizabeth Smart Foundation to bring hope and healing to people who have been victimized through child exploitation, sexual assault, and human trafficking. You see, the Elizabeth Smart Foundation and the Maloof Foundation joined forces to make a deeper impact in combating sexual exploitation. And together, they're making a significant impact through education, healing, and advocacy, and hope for families, peace for victims, empowerment for all. And that's our focus tonight, hope and healing from the darkness of that ugly, sinister practice of human trafficking. And we're also going to show you how she joined forces with Tim Brown, the former Heisman Trophy winner and NFL Hall of Famer, and his wife, Sherice Brown. Let's get started. So just a couple of days before the Super Bowl, I had the pleasure of going to Las Vegas to meet with Tim Brown and his wife, Sharice Brown, because they were holding, through their foundation, a celebrity golf invitational. And it was held at the Topgolf facility there in Las Vegas. They were there to utilize that as a fundraiser, raising some $25,000 to donate to the Elizabeth Smart Foundation and the Maloof Foundation. Both of those foundations are dedicated to combating sexual exploitation, child exploitation, human trafficking, and all of that ugliness that goes on. But in that process, they are dedicated to providing hope and healing. So you might be asking the question, well, Kelly, what does a former Heisman Trophy winner and an NFL Hall of Famer know about human trafficking and child exploitation? Well, you see, Tim's wife, Sharice Brown, experienced child exploitation as a young girl. And we're going to talk to her. Here's the story of Sharice Brown now. Hi, everybody. I'm here in Las Vegas, and of course, the excitement is here because of the Super Bowl taking place. But I want to introduce you to someone who knows a lot about the NFL because she's married to a former Heisman Trophy winner and an NFL Hall of Famer, Tim Brown. She is Sharice Brown. Thanks for being on America's.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for having me.
It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You know, no, seriously, because of what you represent in terms of the aspects of the NFL that a lot of people are not familiar with.
Yes.
And that's the fact that you and your husband, Tim, have done so much for women and children beyond the scope of the NFL. Talk to me about that and why you're so dedicated to using your platform to help other people.
So, and I would kind of go more into my story of why I started our organization, Off the Field NFL Wives Association. We are here in Vegas, since we're talking about Vegas, to host our 23rd annual fashion show. So I can tell you a little bit how us as women came together to even begin our organization. We were in, Hawaii every year, going with our husbands to the Players Association meetings. Tim was on the executive board. And he always would say, you come over, you bring your families, you guys have a great time. But we were like, okay, what else can we do? What can we do to give back and support women in children's ministries when we're going into these Super Bowl host cities? Which is something that was very dear to me because I come from a background of a single mom, and I come from a background of child molestation. And the one thing that I always wanted to do was to help and somehow support women and children who have been abused. This organization that I am a co-founder of was kind of like that, almost that comforting platform that I had to be able to get that started.
Sharice, that's, first of all, that's really powerful what you talked about, because you could have put that behind you and moved on, saying, well, I've got my life now. I'm someone who's doing some great things, successful on my own. Yet you and your husband have continued to reach out through your ministry to empower people, and that's helping people fix broken lives.
Definitely.
And one of the things you're doing here this year is the Tim and Sherice Brown Golf Invitational, which will benefit the Maloof Foundation as well as the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. Both of these organizations really focus on some of the sinister aspects of our society, like human trafficking and child molestation.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I'm really just grateful to be a part of that event. Tim met Elizabeth at a golf tournament in Pebble Beach, and he was so, of course, into his golf, but when he saw Elizabeth, he was like, wait a minute, that's Elizabeth Smart. And he went up to her and they just started having a conversation because I guess he wanted to know more about how she was doing after what she had been through and what she was doing, because it was benefiting the Maloof Foundation. And she just shared, you know, what they were trying to do with the initiative that she started to just teach kids about self-defense, to teach them how to fight off predators, which my husband thought, wow, I need to introduce you to my wife. You need to know my wife's story. So fast forward, we have a Zoom call with her team, and my husband's like, "Can you please share, you know, your story with what you went through when you were a little girl?" So I was able to share my story that I had been abused from the age of 3 by a family member, and that went on for a while until my mother had actually came in and caught him in the act of abusing me, and. Of course, when that happens in your family, it of course destroys everything, you know, relationships and everything. He was my mother's brother, so of course that meant her mother, their mother, you know, wanting to protect him, but my mother wanting to protect me. And so they ended up sending him away for a while, but of course sometimes he would always end up coming back to visit, and I would find myself asleep and being bothered again. So that went on for a while until I was old enough to basically stand up for myself and scream and say, you know, just stop bothering me. Finally, they sent him away, you know, to Arizona, where we're from, and tragically he was killed. And I have layers upon layers with this story, and I can share a little bit with you. He was killed, but prior to him passing away, we had lost my grandmother, who was like the matriarch of our family, and she used to tell me, you have to confront him and ask him why he has done those things to you. She was a psychology major, and I used to say, Grandmother, there's no way I can talk to him and ask him that. She said, but you need to. You need to confront him about what he did to you. I never was able to do that. But fast forward, my grandmother passes away, and he comes to me, and he had had a child, and we were the family was raising the little girl. And he asked, if anything ever happens to me, will you raise my daughter? And I just looked, and I was like, of course, of course. So fast forward, she's been in the home with my children. We raised her, and she's like, you know, our other daughter. And she's now 32 years old with her own 2 kids. So the dynamic of the whole thing is like, all of those things happened to me, but because of the grace of God, I was able to have forgiveness in my heart and not hold on to how I had been abused by that person, but to have forgiveness and know that, you know, you have to have forgiveness or you never heal from what you've been through.
Sharice, I never expected that kind of story. And yet your story epitomizes and illustrates what so many women in America go through.
Definitely.
And yet I see resilience, perseverance, faith, hope, love, and one of the greatest things that we're taught by our faith in Christ is to have that capacity to forgive.
Definitely.
Did that help make you whole?
It did. It really did. And that was the one thing that I was able to share with Elizabeth on that call that day. She you know, kind of said, in a sense, I understand what I went through. She said, but what you go through, it happens every single day.
Yeah.
Me being abducted from my home is not as, familiar or often. That doesn't happen that often. She's like, but what happens to you is something that happens in the home on a regular basis that, you see and you hear of young women or young men, because it's not just women, it's young men as well, that are abused by a family member or a friend friend of the family or something, So she said that to me, and she's like, yeah, she said, but what you went through, she said, it happens so often, too often.
Well, first, I need to say thank you for sharing this, because it's so important that people hear this coming from Sherice Brown. You and your husband, you have been dedicated through your ministry to help other children who may be caught up in this or to even prevent it. What is your main goal in doing this? And you've been doing it for so long now.
Well, definitely to support and to be a example of how by having my faith and trusting in the Lord and allowing Him to just to give me the peace that I needed, to heal me. And I'm sorry, sometimes I get emotional when I talk about it. And it was so many years ago, but it never leaves you. It just never does. And sometimes I'm fine, but sometimes when I think about what even happens to so many of these babies and children, it just breaks my heart. So what I do is I'm constantly wanting to share my story, because I want them to know not to keep it to themselves. If they're old enough to share or to tell, please do it, whether it be a teacher or a friend or someone, because sometimes it's so close in the family that they can't go to the mother, because sometimes it's the father. And I want that to be how we communicate, because if you keep it in, how do we help them? How do we help them to, protect themselves if they don't know that when this is happening that you can, go to someone and ask for help? Because I was too young, I was too young.
3 years old, Sharice.
Yes, and people ask, how do you remember that? Oh my gosh, I can't forget it. I just can't.
You want to take a moment?
I'm okay. Thank you. And I think what probably hurts me more is that I have to think about it happening to other children, and I want to protect them so bad.
So what we're talking about is not just an American problem.
Right.
It's a global problem.
Yes, it is.
What do you want people to know about how they can stand up against human trafficking and child exploitation?
Definitely. First off, we have to bring more awareness to it, first and foremost. You hear about, I think it's one of the states in Texas being number 1. You hear about the number 2 and the number 3, but you don't hear enough about it. It's almost like everyone wants to pretend like it's not happening in their city or in their state. But the awareness needs to be there. We need to bring awareness to what is happening. You hear a little bit about it, but I think it needs to be front and center. I don't think that we need to push it to the side. I know we're here at Super Bowl, and it's one of the #1 events where human sex trafficking happens, where young women and young men are grabbed and taken away. But really no one wants to talk about that. Of course, it's a fun time, it's an amazing time, it's an exciting time, but it still is a time where people are getting grabbed and snatched. My daughter went to the mall yesterday, and I had asked her to wait for me, and she's like, "No, Mom, I'm good." She's 25 years old. And I said, "Tamon, just wait. I'll go with you. I don't want you to go by yourself." I said, "It is just, I don't want you to be by yourself." I said, "You are a petite girl, you're a beautiful girl. I don't feel comfortable." She goes, "Mom, I'll be okay." I'm like, "Okay." And then she's dating, her boyfriend said, "No, why are you going?" She goes, you and Christian are freaking out about me going to the mall." I said, "Because this is where they're grabbing young women from. These are the places that they are going because they're predators. They seek them out. They have vans where they're sitting in there waiting for a young girl, a young man to walk by, and then they grab them." So if we don't talk about it, how do you know how to keep yourself safe? How do you know how to protect yourself? So the awareness is one thing that we want to do. Supporting, the Malou Foundation and the Elizabeth Smart Foundation and the initiatives. The more initiatives that are out there that we get involved with, we can help. A dear friend of mine who was actually performing tonight, Kirk Franklin, he was the host of one of our fashion shows one year, and I had gone to a women's center to speak to some young women, and I came back and we all were eating, and he said, "Where'd you go?" And I said, "Oh, I went to speak and share my story with some young women." And he says, "Well, what's your story, sis?" And I kind of gave him a little brief, description of what I had gone through and shared a little bit. And he said, "I would have never thought that." He says, "You carry yourself so confident and, model-esque." He said, "I just never would have thought that was your story." And I had to once again say, by the grace of God, it's not, because I could have been like so many other women who have turned to drugs or alcohol, suicide, the list goes on and on. But I always give the glory back to God for saving me. And when I use that word, saving me, I mean literally saving me. And my heart is just, very passionate, and it's my passion that I can go and I can speak and share my story, but also help find a solution, or help at least bring awareness so we can learn how to protect these children.
And Sharice, you're using your platform. You're also doing fashion shows, and the golf invitationals, and through that visibility, letting this be known.
Definitely.
That is so empowering.
Thank you very much. Our fashion show is benefiting the Bolitnikoff Foundation. And what they have done, and they were established for many years, Tracy's Hope, their daughter, of course, died tragically, and they built a home for young women to come to, and they get them, back on their street, on their feet after, maybe being drugged, bad relationships, and things like that. And so they're very dear to us, very good friends of Tim and I, and very just wonderful people. And their organization here, what they're doing with the Bolitnikoff Foundation here, there's a St. Jude's Ranch. And on St. Jude's Ranch, they're going to build a healing center for young women who have been sex trafficked. And they're eventually going to build a school to help them get their lives back, together, so they can get back and, start working and having normal lives. So they're doing some wonderful things, and that's who our beneficiary is this year for our fashion show. And I'm excited about it because it's personal. Of course, it's the Raiders and us being a Raider family, but also we are honoring Angela Bolitnikoff just for her philanthropic, just everything that she's done with Tracy's Hope, everything she's doing here with St. Jude Ranch. You talk about passionate about, really having a place for these young women to come to. and getting them back into getting their education and, you know, helping them to learn to interview and go on, you know, interviews to, you know, get jobs and things. So it's just really important to support that.
Never let go of hope.
No, you can't. No.
And based on that, what is your hope for America?
Oh my goodness, I always tell my kids and Tim, they're like, oh my gosh, you live in such a different world. I just wish we all would just love each other like God calls us to do. You know, we are called to love each other and not harm each other. You know, that's the one thing that I think is in my prayers all the time, is that we could be a world that would just love each other, support each other, and be able to just really, you know, come alongside each other. That's what we're supposed to do. You know, I don't think we're supposed to be here and just sit here and not do anything. You know, I would feel like, okay, I'm not living up to the calling that God has called me to be or do if I'm not, you know, using what He's given me to bless others.
Sharice, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you and your husband, Tim, and all the people that you've been helping with. And never grow weary in well-doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That's an honor and a pleasure. God bless you. I'll be praying for you.
Thank you so much.
And with you.
Okay. Appreciate that.
All right. We're back with more in just a moment. And welcome back to America's Hope. So this show is dedicated to the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. And I regard her as a champion of hope, someone who overcame what could have been a very tragic circumstance, and she emerged triumphant. Here now is my interview with Elizabeth Smart. Elizabeth Smart joins me in America's Hope, and it's good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. You're doing great things with the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. Let's start with why you started that, because you realize that people matter.
Well, for years after I was rescued, I didn't want people to know what had happened to me. Even though I knew it wasn't my fault what had happened, I still felt a degree of embarrassment and shame around everything what happened, and I just wanted it to go away. I wanted it to stay secret. I didn't want it to be a part of how people viewed me. And I really didn't have a choice, because my case took so long to finally come to trial, and it finally did. I mean, it was almost a decade before it finally came to trial, and I had to talk about the worst parts of my life. I mean, I spent hours in that witness stand testifying about what had happened. And I remember when I was finally finished, just feeling like, well, this is not, I mean, first of all, I didn't want people to know what had happened, but this was definitely not how I wanted, like, my life to be put on display. And even though there were a lot of details that were shared, I felt like, but we didn't cover, like, what led up to this, how this made me feel, how this affected me afterwards, what happened next. And so I just started thinking, if my life is going to be out there, then there needs to be like a reason for it to be out there. If the worst moments of my life are going to be put under a magnifying glass, it needs to serve a greater purpose. And so my dad and I started the Elizabeth Smart Foundation after that, because I just felt like if it was going to be out there, I wanted it to do good. And because it had then been opened up in front of what I felt like was the world at that point, I knew so many others since I had been rescued, you know, the previous 9 years. I had met so many other survivors, and I recognized, I mean, not initially when I first came home, but as time went on, I realized how common my experience actually is, and how, like, the most unique thing about my whole case is that what happened to me was by a stranger. That's the most unique thing. Other than that, like, it happens all the time. And I think it's amazing that here we are today, you know, coming up to the Super Bowl, the event that is like the #1 event in the world for human trafficking and sexual exploitation. And we're here doing this today.
It's so important, you know, to talk about this, because you're right. This is probably the most widely known area for the pinnacle of sports, but it's also known, as you've said, as one of the greatest attractions and draws for child exploitation and human trafficking. What is going on in the minds of people that we have allowed ourselves to fall into this state of depravity that causes so much pain for innocent children, boys and girls?
I mean, honestly, I can't even fathom what's in people's minds to think that this is okay, to think that they can get away with this, to think this is somehow appropriate, or that other human beings are placed here for, like, for their pleasure, or to be disregarded or thrown away. I mean, that is like so just abhorrent on every level to me. It's disgusting.
And the fact that you mentioned the Super Bowl, but the fact that an NFL Hall of Famer, Tim Brown, and his wife Sherice Brown, who is also someone who went through a lot of child exploitation within her own family, and yet they have rallied around you to have this golf invitational here at the Top Golf in Las Vegas, and of course many people will be coming to support that, but the cause that they're supporting is the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. What does that mean to you?
I think it just shows that there is still so much goodness in humanity, and that we can't give up, and that you can take people from completely different backgrounds, completely different everything, and they still can come together and want to make the world a better place. I mean, like, Tim Brown, you're absolutely right. Like, NFL Hall of Fame, like, how incredible. Like, we're here. This is amazing. And he wanted to partner, like, with me. Like, I never imagined, like, it kind of blows my mind. I never imagined I'd be here. Like, I'm just some girl from Utah, and yet he wanted to support this. I think that speaks volumes to who Tim and Sharice Brown are as individuals, but really as well, like, setting an example for all of us to take some initiative and not just be a community full of apathy and let it continue. I mean, we really can make a difference. The statistics today are horrific, they're horrendous, they're terrible, but like we have the power to change those numbers, and that should be encouraging to everyone and motivating to everyone to take a stand and to take action.
And you're taking a stand, and you're doing it for the reasons of saving others from going through what you encountered and what you endured. You talked about being rescued, and yet there are millions of children who are not rescued. So you're on the front lines of this now. And how tough is the battle?
It's horrific. It's scary. I mean, it's like, it just is heartbreaking, because I mean, there's wonderful causes all the time. I'm so grateful for everyone's passion. I'm so grateful for everyone's individual causes that they take on. But at the same time, there's also a part of me that's like, but wait a second. Like, we're talking about right now with children, like elementary kids who go to school, like 1 in 7 children. And actually, just even as we talk here, I mean, I don't know how long we've been talking, 5-10 minutes. Yeah. There's one person is sexually abused every 73 seconds, and every 9 minutes that person is a child. So at least one child has been sexually abused since we've sat here talking. I mean, these are not numbers that I feel like should be ignored, and yet they are. These are numbers that are horrific, that they are just like mind-blowing. Every 9 minutes a child is sexually abused. You know, that's over 6 children an hour, or roughly 6 children an hour. I mean, that's every hour of every day.
That, one, it's heartbreaking and it's shocking. But as I mentioned, you're on the front lines. There are things that you have been doing through the Elizabeth Smart Foundation to change the trajectory of what things have been. Talk to me about what's happening in the state of Utah through the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. And then let's start there, but then let's talk about some of the other things you're doing to empower the children and even the college students?
Yes, so currently right now there is legislation that is being presented that is saying we need to have prevention education in schools. I realize that parents are like, wait a second, you're talking about sexual abuse prevention. That means you need to talk about sex, right? So kids understand what it is. Well, actually, there are so many ways. I mean, there are ways you can talk about it that are age appropriate to a first grader. And you're not gonna have the same conversation with the first grader that you're gonna have with a junior in high school. Those are going to be very different conversations, but you do have to start somewhere. And as we talk about education in K through 6th grade, that's specifically what we're focusing on this current bill in Utah. This is not just education for this moment or education for this year. This is education for life, because the statistics, they don't get better. I mean, as a kid, you are 1 every 9 minutes. It's about 1 in 7 kids is sexually abused. That's elementary age. When you go to college, you're 2 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than you are to be robbed. The national average is about 1 in 5 women are sexually abused. And those are the numbers that are reported. Those are the numbers that we know. It could be much, and I believe it is probably much, much worse than that, because so many people are scared to share their story, or scared to speak out, or feel threatened, or feel like they'll endanger themselves, endanger their family if they speak out about abuse that they've suffered.
Wow. So now, I hope that passes, but you also want to see it go national. So that means it has to be introduced to the Congress of the United States. Do you think that politicians on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., have faced this ugly beast that's plaguing our society? We hear about fentanyl, we hear about illegal immigration, and we know the atrocities that have been committed because of that. But have we talked enough about this from a congressional standpoint and even a presidential standpoint? Because when I talk to you, Elizabeth, I believe that all hands should be on deck.
Oh, I'm with you. I am with you. So no, I don't, because it is believed that up to 95% of this sexual abuse can be prevented through education. And if that were the case, if we had people who were seriously looking at this and taking all of these different numbers and facts into consideration, we would be having a much bigger conversation, and we would have seen action already happen. I mean, you think of all the safety education that's taught today, which I'm a fan of. I'm in support of all safety education. But you think of things, I think of the things I was taught, I was taught, if you catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll. I'm pretty sure everyone knows stop, drop, and roll. But I recently was told it's only about 1 in 700 people that actually use stop, drop, and roll. 1 in 700. We're talking about kids, 1 in 7. We're talking about, adults, adult women, 1 in 5. If so much emphasis has been put on 1 in 700, I think that shows that we care about the 1, but then we need to do more in this area.
America's Hope continues in a moment. Absolutely. You were also explaining to me earlier before our interview that you now have self-defense courses being taught, as well as, and through that self-defense course, you're teaching women how to feel empowered and how to protect themselves against any predator or a stranger danger.
Yeah, so our course is called Smart Defense, and it is trauma-informed self-defense. And as I mentioned earlier, I would guess at least 80% of our participants who come through have already been abused in some way. So we're seeing very high numbers of survivors, looking to feel empowered again. And when I think about what is abuse, what is rape, I think of the victims, what their experience is a lack of choice. They're experiencing someone dominating them in a very brutal and physical way, invasive way, and and completely stripping them of all choice, of all power. And so Smart Defense, it is a combination of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, and Muay Thai. And it combines all these to give you the best chance. Our goal is not to have you sit and pummel someone into the ground, although if that happened, I'd be on the sidelines cheering. That is not our goal. Our goal is to help you to get away. Our goal is to help you get to safety. That is the number one goal. As soon as you have a window to get away, take it. That being said, I also recognize that these are skills that just taking it once or sitting through one seminar, that's not enough. I mean, it might give you a little bit of education, but these are skills that they need to be consistently practiced. I mean, like a musical instrument or a foreign language or anything else in life. If you want these tools to be readily available to you, you do need to practice them. And that starts with your voice. You know, one of the first things my director has our attendees do is to practice screaming. And it feels like a little bit awkward and a little bit funny at first. And as I have sat and watched these women and girls come through, and nobody really screams like really, really loud. They don't scream like people scream at the Super Bowl. You know, like it's maybe like 50%, maybe that would be good, of what they're actually, like of what their volume is actually capable of. And your voice is strong, is powerful. I mean, make noise. Most predators are predators of opportunity. They look for vulnerability. They look for the loners. They look for the easy pickings. I mean, that's, of course, it's not always the case, but it is a lot of the time. And so even the way that we carry ourselves in public, are you walking with confidence? Are you sitting there looking at your phone as you walk? Are you paying attention to what's going on around you? Do you have situational awareness? I mean, it's all of these factors coming into play here. And so our Smart Defense, we talk about this. We talk a lot about this. We talk a lot about breath work. We talk a lot about taking up space. I mean, it's easy to be like, even on, I'm just thinking on my flight here, you know, I was on Southwest, so we were all like smashed in wherever, you know, you're just looking for a seat wherever. And like, I feel like for me, every time I get on a plane, I'm like very conscious of how I sit. I feel like I'm usually like very much just like closed in tight, like I don't want to take up other people's rooms. Whereas some other people are very much like all over the place, and I'm just like, oh, it's okay. But it's okay, and I'm a terrible example because I am working at it on myself. I have a hard time saying no. I have a hard time taking up space because that's the opposite to everything, the way that I was raised, everything that I was ever taught. It was always be polite, be gracious, you know, like give people the benefit of the doubt, which would be wonderful if everyone was that way, but they're not. And so you need to stand up for yourself, and that's what Smart Defense is.
That's good. That's good. You talked about the fact that for a lot of people, we believe in their story, and many times a young girl or even a young boy, when they're telling you that something is happening, that someone is messing with them sexually, there's the disbelief. And so you abandon the care that you could provide for the child. Talk to me about that and why that has to change, that we need to really investigate and listen to children when they're saying that, when they're telling you that something's wrong.
So our We Believe You campaign, I mean, it's for everyone. It's for everyone, child,
adult,
everyone. Because sadly, the average is you have to tell 5 different people before you're believed. 5 different people, I mean, that means a child. Like I think of myself as a kid, if I had to go tell 5 different people what happened to me and I was met with disbelief the first 4 times, well, first of all, I don't know that I would have made it to 4. I don't know that I would have made it to 5. I might have stopped after 1 if I could even find the courage to say what had happened once. Because it is terrifying. It's hard. Too many individuals fear for their lives, are scared they've been lied to, they've been told bad things will happen, your parents won't believe you, no one will believe you, I'll hurt your sister, I'll hurt your mom, I'll hurt your dad, your parents will go to jail. Like, there's so many lies that have been told. And so it can be very, very difficult to find the courage to speak out about what has happened. And then even beyond that, I think of the people on the receiving end of listening to someone share that, disclose their abuse to them. That can be really hard to know how to respond. And so a lot of time, I think I want to say it's like a safety defense where people are like, well, there must have been a reason that this happened, because I think in our heart of hearts, we know if it could happen to them, it could happen to us, but we don't want to think that it could happen to us or could happen to anyone that we care about. And so we think, well, what were you doing that put you in that situation? When the truth is, it doesn't matter. It does not matter what you were doing. It doesn't matter what you were wearing. It doesn't matter what you were drinking or where you were at or who you were with. Like, none of those details mattered. What matters is that it did happen, and we need to start by believing in our survivors when they share what's happened to them. We need to start by believing them. We need to start by supporting them, by loving them, by not just getting scared and being like, this is too much for me to handle. I need to run away. I understand having boundaries. I'm a huge supporter of having boundaries, but don't disappear out of these survivors' lives. We're not going to help anyone if we just disappear, if we just turn around and walk away.
What is your hope for America?
That we will see change. I mean, we have the education, we have the tools to change the numbers. Let's stop America being the #1 consumer of child exploitation, the #1 buyers of human trafficking. Let's change that. We should be the leaders in this space. We shouldn't be the worst offenders in this space. So yeah, I think we have mountains, worlds worth of room for improvement. But I think there are more good people in this world than there are bad. I think there are more good people in America than there are bad. And I have hope and I have faith in humanity that things will change, and that hopefully in my lifetime we will see the numbers start to change.
I stand with you on that. Elizabeth, thank you. As you spoke in front of everybody, this dynamic person emerged. You're always dynamic, but you were kind of low-key and very calm and collected with me, and I hope that I bring that out in you. But I saw the power in what you were saying to people. What's that like to be able to talk in front of an audience and tell them your experience?
I mean, it used to be very scary and intimidating. And I used to carry a binder around with me that was 3 inches thick, full of notes and stuff. And one day I forgot it. And I was walking up stage and I just kept thinking, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? I've left my notes, I've left my safety blanket. And then I had this epiphany as I was walking up to stage. Nobody knows my story better than me. No one is gonna tell me I'm wrong, because this is my story, and I'm the authority on my life, and only I know what happened to me during those 9 months. And because I do know exactly how it feels, I know exactly what it's like to be raped, because I was for months, multiple times a day, because I know what it's like to be chained up, because I know what it's like to be isolated from family, from people that you love, from people who would protect you. Because I know all of that, then I know I can do whatever I need to try to prevent that from happening to anyone else.
When you were going through that, what kept you going?
It was belief that my family would still love me, that no matter what, they wouldn't give up on me. Maybe the rest of the world would give up on me. Maybe I wouldn't be worthy to have friends. Maybe I wouldn't be worthy to have a family of my own one day, but hopefully my parents and my siblings would still love me. And for me, that was worth surviving for.
And your family survived, and you're champions now, champions of hope. I want you to just take a moment and talk to all of the families in America, the little girls, the little boys, the older girls and boys who have become adults, and they've gone through trauma that is similar to yours. tell them who they are and why they matter.
You do not deserve what has happened to you. You didn't do anything wrong. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be cared for. You deserve to be happy. And just because something terrible has happened to you that was beyond your control, that doesn't mean that that needs to be the rest of your life. Your life can still go on to have meaning and to be wonderful and to have it be everything that you ever wanted it to be. You are worth it. You deserve to be happy. Do not ever give up on yourself.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. My thanks to Elizabeth Smart and Sherice Brown, two courageous women who are telling their stories in order to help other people, to empower them, and to provide them with hope and healing. Until next time, America.